everyone. So the excerpt that you just heard was the John Williams' A Prayer for Peace. So this excerpt is the more lyrical of the two between B and C. So for this excerpt, you want to make sure that you are, again, playing with good sound, good rhythm, and very good intonation, okay? So what I mean by this piece is a little straightforward, is most of what we require from this piece is very nice, soft tones when necessary. We want to make sure that we're following the dynamics as much as possible. We also want to make sure that we are using vibrato as much as possible. So from the very beginning, we have a solo. So you are allowed to do up or down bow, whatever suits you best. I started this excerpt down bow, but I will show you how to do it up bow. Now, what I did, and a stylistic preference or an artistic preference that I made, was in bar 15, I actually went up into third position. You are more than welcome to start in a different position even from the very beginning, if you so choose. Definitely talk to your private instructor and see what fingering suits you best. However, just shifting into third position, I actually changed the color of the phrase itself, okay? So when I talk about phrase, I'm talking about sentences in music, okay? Typically, towards the end of a phrase, you want to taper. So this means that you want to do a slight decrescendo so that we know we are done for that given phrase. So in the beginning, between measure 13 and measure 16, that is just one long phrase. What we want to avoid with this particular excerpt is we want to avoid portato sounds. And what I mean by that is we want to avoid having this kind of huffing noise and stopping the bow in between. So something like this. Although it's beautiful, it's not necessary for this particular excerpt. So again, from the beginning, you want to make sure that even though we do have the slurs marked in different spots, you want to make sure that it's just one overall phrase, okay? So make sure not to make it too choppy. A challenge that I see for this one is to ensure, one, not to do portato, and two, to save bow. Okay, so at measure 17, we're just going to go ahead and look at the very next line. At measure 17, this is a tutti section. Okay, so that means all of the section is going to be playing together. For this part, we have an apostrophe marked or a breath mark marked. Take it and do it. So for instance, we have measure 17. Very subtle the way that I tapered the bow and stopped it just for that second, okay? Make sure that you pay attention to the detail. So I would definitely take that apostrophe. And the rhythm, we want to make sure that we do not rush. So again, we're gonna go ahead and take out our metronome, okay? We're gonna start right at measure 17. Smooth, beautiful sound. Something that we see in measure 20 is we see between the notes G and D a slight decrescendo. Something that could help you make this crescendo even bigger or more noticeable is by changing the speed of your vibrato, okay? So for instance, for the G natural, you can do a wider vibrato. And then for the D natural, you can do just a very more narrow, okay, and then taper. So for instance, we're gonna do, all right? Something else that you can consider when you're doing vibrato, okay? It's harder than we think, but we want to make sure that the vibrato is consistent and that you're playing the vibrato for all the notes within the phrase. So for instance, what we want to avoid is doing something like this. okay? So one, it sounds like I'm accenting two notes, there are no accents marked, and the other thing is just, it's not very cohesive, okay? So you do not have to do an open A for, and I'm looking at measure 18, you do not have to do an open A there. I chose to do that just because I was in the moment, but you can definitely do this in third position. And a slight gliss, just a slight gliss sounds beautiful when you know how to use it. So definitely nothing like that, just something slight. So notice how I use the vibrato for all four notes. Is a prime example of where you need to save the bow. So for instance, we have okay, we want to make sure that there's no accent on 21 either, so we don't want to arrive. Just relax the bow and make sure that you are using nice, I call them marshmallow knuckles, but springy knuckles when you are playing so that you can keep the bow on the string as much as possible. Another thing that you could do is consider the different sounding points that you are using. So when I talk about sounding points, I refer to the placement of the bow on this particular region. So in this particular region, so we have the bridge and then the fingerboard and everything in between I like to measure with numbers. So for instance, this is number 1, point number 1, 2, 3 is the very center, and then 4 and 5 is where the fingerboard lies. So for most pieces that are a little bit more aggressive and have like a fortissimo, I'm definitely going to be at 1, which is way up here. So yes, it was a little scratchy when I played, and that's definitely the highest, or that's where the string has the most amount of tension, so it's going to be very loud. In this section right here, and especially at measure 21 where you have a hairpin, you definitely want to play with the bow a little bit and see if you can manipulate it to a point where you can do the crescendo. So you can see that I moved from one spot to the next. So I was like probably at like a 1, then I went to a 3. And notice that when I played the D natural, I let the bow sway towards the fingerboard, okay? Bow placement, sounding point, is very important. So it's impossible to play this piano if you're gonna be here in the middle of the string the entire time. Another thing to consider is how much hair you are using, okay? And what I mean by that is, are you gonna be using flat hair the entire time that you're playing? It's not the best method to use flat hair, because this piece is just a little softer and a little more legato. So I would probably use this much hair, so like half of your bow hair. And I would definitely tilt the bow, okay? So as I mentioned, the most important thing is not to break the phrasing unless super necessary. So as violinists, that means that our bow changes have to be extremely smooth, okay? So when you do a bow change, you actually want to play with more speed just as you're about to change, because if you slow down before a bow change, then the bow change will be more apparent. So for instance, if I do and I slow down the bow change, you can hear two totally different bows. And if I speed up the bow change, you can see that yes, I can hear two different bows, but it isn't as choppy. So for instance, we're gonna look at the pickup to measure 24. I wanna make sure that I don't hear, okay? Subtle difference, but it definitely changes the phrase overall, so it's not choppy. So that's just an example. Here at measure 28, okay, as you can see that I'm using a lot more bow speed and I'm using more bow and I'm getting closer sound point wise to the bridge, you want to make sure that one, you don't rest this section, and two, go ahead and use a lot of vibrato. So at measure 28, we have. Okay, especially at the end, because we're about to hit a fortissimo, you could actually use a lot more bow hair, so meaning I'm probably going to use just a little bit more flat hair, and I want to get closer to the bridge, and I want to use more bow speed. So I'm looking at measure 28, 29, 30, 31. Okay. I am definitely going to let the sound ring, and the way that I'm going to go ahead and do that is by lifting the bow and shaping the bow this way up instead of just in one jerky motion, okay? So, for instance, okay, the last note is very important, so you might want to save just a little bit more bow on the B natural, and then spend that bow on the D sharp. So I'll show you one more time. Okay, make sure that it's in tune, obviously. So overall, as I mentioned before, we want to make sure that we have good sound, good pitch, and good rhythm. Please listen to a recording of this so that you can actually feel the ambiance and you can hear what the other instruments are playing as you begin the solo at the very beginning, okay? It's very important that you understand the context of this excerpt, okay? So, as you can see, this excerpt is definitely on the slower side. So when you put your metronome on to, let's just say 65, then you must make sure that you are subdividing, okay? Just to avoid rushing. So what I'll go ahead and do is I'm gonna go ahead and play the excerpt in its entirety, and I want you guys to listen for dynamics. Listen to the way that I am shaping the phrases, okay? If there are certain parts that you do not like my vibrato and you would probably want to do faster vibrato or maybe just a wider vibrato, that is your choice and you can definitely do that. So main thing is, let it be beautiful, lush, and have fun playing, all right? I'm gonna go ahead and turn on my metronome so we can make sure that we are keeping solid time when I play. Thank you so much for listening and happy practicing. Bye.